Hey there everybody, it's Dicebag and welcome to the official how to play video for Domain. So I'm going to go through this whole thing and show you the basics so you don't have to question too much when you go in and read the rules itself. You'll be able to reference the video and get the gist of how things actually play out in the game itself. So to start off, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the card types right here. So what we have are the different types are units, which are your main offensive capabilities and defensive. These are the guys that you use to attack and defend with, and they form the backbone of your military. Then we have territories, which you need to be in the game. As soon as you run out of territories in play, then you lose the game. So your main condition of winning is to run your opponent out of territories by attacking them usually. So territories are a big deal. Now you'll notice both units and territories have these numbers on the side. Those are your strength and your size for each of these cards. Now strength is how much the card will deal in combat, how much damage it deals. The size is how much damage it takes to destroy it. And also you'll see, we gotta go over the costs here. On the left hand side here we have the formula bar, which is where the costs for the cards are. That's on all the cards. So all the cards have a cost, and those costs are paid in supplies. And of course, we'll go over that a little bit when we get to resources. Anyways, the next one, we have spells. Spells are a little different. Most of the cards that we have played here, they come out in play and they stay in play after you play it. Spells happen immediately. They resolve all the rules text, and then they either go to the scrapyard, which is our discard pile in Domain, or, as is in the case with Frostbind here, since it attaches to something in play, it stays in play. But most will go to the scrapyard. And last but not least, we have our artifacts, which have all kinds of different abilities that can affect the play. So those are just kind of well, you'll have to read them as they go. There's not a whole lot of specific things that are universal to artifacts. Now, there's a couple other things. We have a couple of super types. Super types are types that modify a basic type, and here we have quick and basic, and these add extra rules to the game. So first off, we have the quick ones. You know what? Let's start with the basics. They're much simpler. Basic units are pretty straightforward. Basic anything, any kind of cards. So far we only have basic units, but there will be different ones. There will be examples of each type later on down the line. But any card that's a basic bypasses the usual deck building limit of 4 copies of a single card in your deck. You can have any number of basics in your deck. Now, quick is a little more complicated. We'll talk about it a little more in depth at the end, but quick cards can basically be played at any time. And that can be played during your normal build phases. They can be played on your opponent's turn, at the end of your opponent's turn, during combat, before a card resolves, whatever. We'll talk a little more about that later. Now let's talk a little more about the actual dissection of the card. Of course, we talked about, oh no wait, we got to talk about resources. Resources, you may have noticed that, oh geez, what's that? Dice bag, you got text on the bottom there that's upside down. Oh wait, that's the secret type we have right here. Resource is not technically a card type you'd see on here. in the type line, but every card can be turned into a resource, and to do that, all you do is you play it upside down. So your resources are what you use to produce supplies, and supplies are what you use to play your cards. So you'll need to play resources in order to play any of your other cards normally. And now we can talk about your costs here. Now obviously your cost, you got different colors. You got the blue, black, red, green, white. Those are all different. And you'll see we've got one with a 2 in a circle there. So what this means is that it's a total of 3. We've got 2 in the circle means 2 of any color. And then the red one means 1 that's specifically red. So this will cost 3. 1 red and then 2 of whatever else you have. And then of course you got, this one is 2, 1 of any color and 1 black. And then 2 again, 1 of any color and 1 blue. And just 1 white. So there's the gist of that. And we already went over the strength and size. Then we've got your rules text. Some of the rules text gets a little bit complicated, so you have to read it thoroughly. But basically this guy, he has a static ability here, strategic, which means that his activated abilities can only be played during your build phase. Then here he's got an activated ability, and you can tell because it has a cost with a colon right there, and then an effect right after it. So this, you'll pay that much in supplies from your resources, and then you'll attach it to a unit you control. And then while it's attached, it has this effect here. And that's how rules text plays out. And of course, with spells, they happen immediately. They don't really have static abilities or anything. This one, as soon as you play it, it attaches itself to a unit. And while it's out in play, that unit can't attack or block. Now we also have this little symbol here. It's a little different. Let's see if we can get it to focus. There we go. That's a little arrow pointing to the right in a circle. That's different than your supply costs right next to it. And what that is the expend symbol. So that means in order to activate this ability here, you'll have to pay those supplies from your resources and also turn it sideways, which is what we call expending. And as long as it's sideways, it can't be expended for anything else again. You'll have to wait until it gets refreshed, usually at the start of your next turn. And another note on resources, some of them do have more complicated rules attached to them. And let's see, let's get some focus going. Come on, there we go. See, this one has a double color, so it can be used for 2 different colors if you, well, one at a time. So you can get either white or blue out of this one. But it has little drawback that, to make up for it, that it enters the field expended. So if you were to play this from a resource, you wouldn't be able to use it on the same turn. It would come in sideways like so, and you'd have to wait until it refreshes on your next turn before you get to access the supplies from it. Now, let's talk about how you actually start a game of Domain. Now, first thing you do, you'll have your deck here. Now, if you've got a new deck, which you probably do since you're watching the How to Play video, you're going to find that there's a bunch of basic units in there. There's actually 10 more than you need. So what you're going to do is you're going to take out 10. You're going to take out your 10 basic units, and that'll leave you with a 50 card deck here. That is the standard size for Domain decks. So if you're getting adventurous and hey, you have multiple decks you want to mess around with. 50 is the standard size if you're building your own particular decks. And of course you'd shuffle it up and all that, and then start the game by deciding who goes first through whatever random process you want to use, whether it's a die roll or rock, paper, scissors or whatever. We'll say that this player will win the first turn, and the first thing we're going to do is draw 7 cards. Now, don't get too attached to these cards, because you're going to look at these, and you're only going to keep 2 of them. So let's say we're going to keep Shambling Core and Behemoth Stampede. The other 5 we are going to play face down in front, and these count as 0-2 territories while they're face down. Now you need to keep at least 1 territory in play to stay in the game. Once you lose all your territories, whether they're face up or face down, and you can see this guy, our little opponent I have set up here, has a face up territory ready. Once you lose them all, you lose the game. So you'll want to protect them. And also, when you've got face down territories and one of them gets destroyed, instead of going directly to the scrapyard, it goes back to your hand. So you'll get to put that, add that to your hand once it gets destroyed. And that's a little bit of a catch-up mechanic to balance out the aggressive early decks. So after you pick out your the 2 you keep and the 5 you put down, you're going to fill your hand back up to 7 cards. And this is where the real game begins. Starting your first turn, what you'll do is normally you draw a card, but if you're the first player taking the first turn, you skip the draw phase on that turn to offset the advantage of going first. And then let's take a look at our hand. After we've drawn our card for the turn, we would turn everything that's expended upright. That's called refreshing it. That's your refresh step. And then we move on to our build step. Now during the build step, what you'll be able to do, that's where you're going to play most of your cards. And so this is where you play your resources as well. So with resources, you're allowed to play 1 each turn, and well, that's about it. 1 per turn. So we'll take this basic unit because it's not especially valuable, and we'll play it as a resource like so. Say it's upside down like that, and then we'll look at what we got here. So we're going to jump ahead a little bit. We don't want to play out a whole game right here. So we're going to jump ahead and say we've got a few resources where a little later in the game. And we can see we've got enough to actually play some of our cards here. So during the build step, you'll also be able to play your units and so like so. And now whenever a unit enters the battlefield, or not the battlefield, just the field. Whenever the unit enters the field, it'll be mobilizing. So that just means that until your next turn, it can't do anything that would require it to expend. Which means it can't attack, it can't use its abilities that use the expend symbol. And that's a specific rule for the units. Other card types are not subject to this rule, so you can play your any of your activated abilities that expend, say, units or not units, territories and artifacts like that. They're not subject to the rule. They can expend as soon as you play them. Now we'll move on to the combat step. This is where the fun comes in. Now again, we're skipping ahead a little bit. So let's say this is the next turn after the Rage Chanters came down. And they're done mobilizing, they're ready to attack. So what we're going to do is we're going to first assign the attackers. Heck, let's jump ahead a little bit and say we've also got some Shambling Core here. So we're going to assign our attackers to territories. Now with the Rage Chanters, you see they have a little ability. Charge. This unit gets +1 strength and size until end of turn. And a charge ability is a triggered ability, by the way. That's something that happens in addition to a triggering event. In the case of charge abilities, that event is attacking. So when this card attacks, it gets this bonus. And when you decide to attack, you'll assign each of your attackers to a certain territory. You can have both of them attack the same territory. You can have them each attack different territories. It doesn't really matter. But you'll need to do that in order to let your opponent know which one of them you're attacking. And because, as you can see, your standard ones that are face down, they count as 0-2s, but the face up ones can be just about anything. So if you were to attack with just a 2-2, they may think, you're attacking the fortress, which isn't going to do much damage. I don't need to block. But no, you need to declare which territory each one is attacking. That way, and once you're done declaring, you'll expend each attacker. That's why they can't attack while they're mobilizing. And then your opponent will move on to declaring blockers. So, let's see. We got some blockers here. Let's say this guy blocks him and this guy blocks him. So what we have here is, you'll see that blockers need to be refreshed, and they also don't expend when they block. So these guys have not attacked or anything like that. They're fresh, they're ready to defend. And you can also block the same guy with multiple units and just let the other guys slide through. But we're going to divvy it up like this. So what we've got here, we've got the Rage Chanters with their bonus are a 3-3. Meanwhile, the Deepwood Guardians here that are blocking them are a 4-4. So they're a clear winner here. What happens when in combat is that you'll deal the damage equal to your strength to each one. So he takes the 3, he takes the 4. And since the Guardians have 4 size, that means they need 4 damage to be destroyed. And since they only took 3, they stay out. Now, the Chanters, on the other hand, since with their bonus, they're only at 3 and they took 4, they would be destroyed in combat and go to the scrapyard over here. Now we have Shambling Core over here versus Shambling Core on the other side as well. That's just a straight up mirror match. These guys are going to deal 3 damage to each other, and they only have 3 size each, so both of them get destroyed. Now, let's say that there are no blocks. Let's make our attacks like so. So what we see here, when there are no blockers, that damage goes directly to the territory there. So this guy deals 3, this can only take 2, it's destroyed. Since it's face down, it goes back to the player's hand. On the other hand, we got Gold Bottom Fortress. It's got 3 size, it takes 3 damage, it's destroyed, but since it's face up, it goes to the scrapyard. And now for good measure, whoops, there we go. Let's talk about multiple blockers. let's say these two are attacking these two territories here. And we've got these three guys available to block. We could block here and save this one for later. And being 1/1s, these two would die without destroying either of the enemies, but the territories would be saved. We could also triple block one of them, in which case this would play out in that the attacking player will decide the order in which his damage is dealt to the blocking creatures. So we'll order it as this guy, then this guy, and since he has 3 strength from the attacking bonus, he'll deal 1 damage to him, and then the leftover damage will go to him for 1, and then the final one will go to 1. Meanwhile, they all 3 deal their damage to him, which is 3, enough to destroy him, and everybody is wiped out. We could also do it in such a way that we block with him and we block with him. Now why you do this, I don't know. It's kind of unnecessary, but it illustrates the point. In this case, if they're blocking Shambling Core here, you can order your opponent's units whatever way you want. So obviously you'll want to probably deal damage to the Dwarven Spearman first, so he'll deal 1 damage to him. The other 2 will go to him, and he won't be destroyed, but he will. And then the 5 damage from the opponent will hit him, and he'll go to the scrapyard. So that's about as much as I can detail as I can go into combat. So after that, after combat, what you'll have is another build phase, what we call the rebuild phase. And then, or the rebuild step rather. And it's just like the build step. You can play whatever cards you want. If you haven't played a resource, you can play the resource then. And once you're done with all that, you'll go to the end step, in which you remove all the damage from your units and territories, and you'll pass the turn to the opponent, who then takes their whole turn. Now, the last thing we need to go through before you're ready to play Domain is quick plays. Now, there's a little illustration I have in the rulebook. So, let's see, we've got our quick spells. And also, you can see triggered, or not triggered, activated abilities on permanents, territories, artifacts, units, whatever. They can also be played at quick speed, as we call it, unless it's specifically on a strategic card. So, of course, you'll see, showed this earlier, but Assassin's Blade has a strategic ability, and it's really a drawback. It just says you can't activate that ability except during your build and rebuild phases. You know, that way your units can't toss around a knife back and forth during the middle of combat. But here's how things play out. Let's say you're going to enter your attack phase, or your combat phase, and your opponent has one of these guys out. And they say, okay, we're going to activate this and expend your Rage Chanters. But you say, aha, I respond. So you expend your resources for supplies and cast your quick spell and deal 3 damage to this. You can do that. That's what we call a quick play. And what happens in this case is they all resolve in order of most recent play to least recent play. So the Conjured Tempest will resolve first. It'll deal 3 damage to the Confederate Frostbringer over here, off screen. And the Frostbringer, having only 3 size, will be destroyed. Since the Frostbringer is destroyed, its ability fizzles. Therefore, your Rage Chanters does not get expended. On the other hand, your opponent may activate the Frostbringer, then you cast your Tempest, and then they say, oh, but I have a counterspell. Now we have the foil spell, which resolves first, and it counters the Tempest, and now there is nothing stopping the Frostbringer from playing its ability, and the Rage Chanters is expended. So basically, once you start the game, you'll flip back and forth turn by turn until one of you runs out of territories. And once you run out of territories, obviously you're done. The other guy wins. There's also what we call an economic victory. This is a little bit of a failsafe, but if you run out of cards in your deck, the next time you would draw a card and you can't, well, you lose the game by default. So you've lost due to attrition in that case. So that should be enough for you to basically grasp how to play Domain right here, and the rest is in little rulebooks right here. They'll be a little more laid out and organized, and they'll have references for your steps of a turn. They'll have descriptions of all the abilities. You'll notice I didn't go into those because that would take several videos, probably. And then a little more glossary for the terminology and just all the little details. So thanks for watching. I hope you'll give Domain a try. You can find it on the Game Crafter, and it comes in 5 different decks, which can be mixed and matched, of course. And also, there will be should be a link in the description for the official website for Domain, and it should have more in-depth rules for all that. If you're not already watching it on the website, hint, hint. And we'll also have some lore and stuff going up on the website in the near future, so check that out for more information about the game world and all that. Other than that, thanks for watching and have fun. I'll see you guys later.